David had a contented life. He tended the sheep for his father, and from time to time, he plays a little bit music to enjoy the moment. All was well until an old man one day anointed him and told him that God had chosen him to be the next king of Israel. From that moment, he traded the open plain field for the battlefield as he became the armor bearer for Saul. Now, being in the palace and surrounded by royalties, he was a bit closer to fulfill his destiny. But reaching his destiny came much more reality after he defeated Goliath, and he became a hero, and his name on the tongue of everyone in Israel. Some of the ladies went a bit further and ran down the street shouting, Saul had killed his thousands and David his 10,000. Now you can imagine, as king, you hear something like this, you feel your kingdom threatened. It's only a matter of time before you desire to get rid of the person potentially could get your position. So King Saul set out to kill David, and David had to run. Certainly not the direction we would like to go for someone God just promised going to be the next king of Israel. There was no place to hide in Israel that David ended up going to Gath. You have to imagine the level of desperation he had to have to go to the very city where Goliath he had just killed was born. But he finds solace there for a while, then he left for the cave of Adullam, where a bunch of other guys, outlaws, people who owe people, and a bunch of ragtags joined him. 400 men joined him there. And those men became his new family. David underwent a lot of running around, trying to escape Saul. His ranks swelled up to about 600, and he realized that no place was safe for him, and he decided to return back to Gath. While he was there, Achish took a liking on him, and those two men became friends. And one day, David asked Achish, could he have some land for him to live, him and his men? And Achish says, no problem, I'll give you Ziklag. David and his men and their families live in Ziklag for a while. After David had spent about a year and 4 months in the land of the Philistine, Achish decided he's going to campaign against Saul and asked David and his men to join him at Aphek. Aphek from Ziklag is approximately 62 miles. In those days, there were no cars, no planes, you had to walk. So they walked to Aphek. When they got there, the commanders told Aphek, you may trust David and his men, but we don't trust them as much as you do, because they're not one of us. Just imagine in the heat of battle, they decided to change side. What would happen? So at Aphek, Achish heed to the advice of his commanders and sent David back. Now, these men just got to Aphek, and now they have to go back home. And they tell us they did it in 3 days. So the first walked 62 miles, and then now they have to walk back 62 miles, and they did 3 days. So these men were tired, they were hungry, and they probably were looking for a good home-cooked meal and nice rest. But as they approached Ziklag, they saw smoke in the horizon, and they rushed. And when they got there, their village was burnt to the ground, and everyone they loved were no longer there. The scripture tells us that they wept, they cried until they could not cry anymore. I don't know if you ever experienced an agonizing pain, and to cry with agony. It is a different way of crying because all your inside feels the pain and coming out. You feel the constriction in the cry. It is rather painful. In that moment that David is suffering the loss of his family and his loss of everything that he possessed, his men gathered together and decided they're going to kill him. At Ziklag, the man David trusted the most with his life were planning on taking his life. Ziklag, David is watching his men encroaching to where he is to take his life. Many things could have gone through his head, and one day I certainly hoped to talk with him to ask him what was going through his mind. After God has promised him to be king, after God has promised him a kingdom, this is what his life has become. At Ziklag, the reality that one day he would be king was just a dream. His life was in imminent danger. David could have complained. He could have hated people. He could have asked God, why me? But he decided to strengthen himself in the Lord. We all have our Ziklag, like David. And how we face it is different. But I have to tell you, over and over, we see David don't focus on the circumstances that surround him, but focus instead on the one who can take care of those circumstances. When David heard about Goliath, the army was trembling. Saul was scared to death. But David saw Goliath. He saw Goliath's height. He knows what Goliath could do. He was aware of the training of Goliath. But what David saw was the one who was with him was much bigger than Goliath. He approached Goliath because he strengthened himself in the one who created the universe. So when David again is in imminent danger, it was normal for him to do what David does best and strengthen himself in the Lord. I have to tell you, if somebody tells you strengthening yourself in the Lord is easy, they're lying to you. It's not easy. I don't care how long you've been sitting in church or how many times you read the Bible. It is not an easy task. I could attest to it. In 2018, I got some lab result that came out contrary to what I would have liked. And as I looked at it again, put it away. I said, it's a mistake. Can't be right. Can't be mine. Lab make mistakes all the time. Second lab. I think I got poked so many times in a 2 months period of time. They just could have put a zipper right over the vein and just unzip it every time and just get what they need. Things wasn't good as well. I have to tell you, the first thing that went through my mind is, why me? I went through all the processes people go through. I bargained with God. I talk and pray. I put my list. I did everything that you can imagine people go through in those moments when they're facing Ziklag. I was praying with my wife, and she placed her hands on my head. And I have to tell you, the couple of weeks that preceded that moment, I cried, I moped around, I dragged. When I came to church, I'm just, moping around, everything is okay. Life was different. I go to work, and all I'm thinking about is that I was tormented by it. But she put her hand and was praying, and she said something that changed my life forever. Because she concluded her prayer with, no matter what happens, I trust the will of God. That to me at that moment was like a double-edged sword. It was comforting to know that I can trust the Lord, but it was also highlighted that I was a hypocrite. Since the late 80s, I've been telling people to have faith. Since the late 80s, I've went to countless houses and prayed for people. Oh my God. I hold the hand of dying people and try to comfort them with the words and God. Share the word of God. Say how great it is. And now it was my turn. All that went out of the window. And I have to tell you, I needed that prayer to set me straight. Because I'm telling people to do all these things, to trust and trust and trust and have faith. And at my moment, I had none. I'm giving God a whole list of things, what to do, how things should turn out, how we should do things, what I plan to do, my family and my goals, my dream, my aspiration. And his direction is completely wrong. Let me help him. And then when it's someone else, I was telling them to trust in the providence of God. At that moment, I spent time reading some of my old writings, read the Bible. I spent a period of time for myself, and I was talking about it with my aunt. And she said that there's a place called Centurion Ministries in Tennessee. They do healing and praying at a Seventh-day Adventist program. I would like you to go there for a couple of weeks. I said, I'm working. I cannot just stop working to go there. She says, just go. I went over there. It was the best moment of my life. I have to tell you, if God came there, we have questioned whether or not we'll be saved. I have to tell you, at that moment, I definitely guarantee I would have been there. It is a phenomenal camp. We spent the next several weeks praying, meditating, and studying the Bible. I went to church on Saturdays. The messages were very powerful and comforting. And all of us who were there were a lot of us, have problems. Our problems were different, but we all were in similar situation, facing different type of crises, but united in their ultimate possibility. But we were smiling and laughing and having fun. It is strange to see people who are uncertain about the very next day, laughing and having fun. I left Tennessee to come home, and I have to tell you, I've changed. Still today, I have to tell you, if God says you're going to have perfect life, I'll still take it. Don't get me wrong. But if it is not his goal, I'm okay with it. See, strengthening ourselves in the Lord is giving up the self. As long as we are telling God what to do, we can't see his glory. And our God is powerful. We see it throughout the Bible. We read about it. We can tell people every detail, every story in the Bible. But we keep missing the point because I told you I missed the point. You probably hear me told you about how God parted the sea and the Israelites go through. But can you imagine standing in front of the Red Sea, looking at the water, the Egyptians coming behind you, mountain on both sides, and no way out? That defining moment will tell you what your relationship with God is. Because there is no way out. But as long as we're planning on trying to make boats and rafts, trying to find tunnels and ways to get through, we can't see the glory of God. Because if we're trying to build something, trying to get across, how can He part the sea for us? God promised the Israelites He would get them to the promised land. And they finish crossing the Jordan, the Red Sea. They get to Jordan and they're worrying about that little river. But God's promise was not for them to embank by the Jordan River. It was for them to get to the promised land. And there they did get. Joseph went through so many problems in his life. And in prison, he could have imagined, I can't believe I trusted God with Potiphar's wife. I should just get my way and keep my job. He's trying to do something good, and he ended up in jail. Where is God there? What's going on? He should be protecting me. I'm doing His will. But prison, we know now, was not the destiny of Joseph. Being a governor was his destiny. We can talk about good stories after stories of how God delivers people over and over in the Bible. But strengthening ourselves in our God when we give up and let God take charge of our lives and every aspect of our lives does not rely on all the good outcomes that comes throughout the Bible, but also knowing that our head could be served on a silver platter, like John the Baptist, but knowing we could be stoned to death, like Stephen. Those are defining moments when we're facing Ziklag as Christians, to know who God is. For us to say, how great thou art, you need to know God. Now, the love of God should strengthen us. For who He is, for all we know about Him, He chose to give that up, to take our own skin and to maintain it through our eternity. Because the Bible tells us we'll be able to put our hand through the holes of His hand, just so He could be with us. That's the level of love that He has for us. Do you think He really wants to hurt us? We are here going through our Ziklag, but He promised us our promised land. And there He will get us. I could assure you, how difficult your Ziklag may be, let go. Let go. I have to tell you, ever since that day, I'll tell you what I do every day. My Ziklag doesn't disappear. The territory seems to be getting bigger and bigger. I have to tell you that much. The problem just keeps getting worse and worse. I remember I woke up, I had like 3 lymph node, big lumps on my neck. My wife goes, what's that? And I look, I'm like, oh, I had like 3 big lumps in my neck. And I had to attend a Tennessee. They did some herbal thing and prayers, and it went down. But I'm telling you, those are scary moments. For anybody who've gone through it, you know those are scary moments. But what I do every morning is this. My prayer with God is this. It says, you said to bring the burdens to you, I'm going to be lazy. I'm not going to worry about them anymore. So I rented the biggest truck you could ever imagine. I find myself the biggest transportation boat you could find, those big merchant ones that carry those things across the Atlantic. I find myself those big Air Force 130s and all their planes. And I shove them with all my problems. And I squeeze them in there to make sure there's no empty rooms. And throughout the day, I keep packing them and just bring him to his feet. He says he'll take care of it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll let him take care of it. Because I come to an understanding of what those Hebrew boys did before the king. When the king says, don't you know I have the right to let you live or to let you die? The king was mistaken, and they had to set the king straight. You see? Sometimes we have to set the doctor straight and then other people straight. They just don't get it. You're not going to tell me when to live or die. My God determines that. I don't know how long that time is, but during my time, while I live, I will trust him and enjoy my moment with him. David strengthened himself in the Lord because he knew who God was. His focus was always on God, not the circumstances that surround him. David, at the time he strengthened himself in the Lord, did not know that his men were not going to stone him to death. But he made that decision. And God led him to an Egyptian slave who told him the plan and where the Amalekites were. And not only did he receive everything that he lost, but more. I am persuaded that there's a day coming that my God is going to give me everything I lost, I'm about to lose, and even more. Because I know there is a time coming I will be entering the promised land. Because beyond the Jordan River, my promised land awaits. Shortly after Ziklag, David was crowned king. After facing the worst moment of his life, he was crowned king. And I have to tell you, as I said, I do not know how your Ziklag, after Ziklag will be for you. I don't know how bad Ziklag is going to be for you. But I could assure you, God is with you and will get you through it. Paul already told us in 2 Corinthians, I believe, 4 verses 8 to 12, that we will be persecuted, but God will not abandon us. We will be perplexed, but not despair. We will be struck down, but not destroyed. Those are not just words, those are facts. The promise of the Lord always comes true. Paul, talking to Timothy, told in 2 Timothy 4, I think 4:10, don't quote me on the verse, but I think it was 2 Timothy chapter 4, when he said to Timothy to strengthen himself in the Lord, he repeats it again to the Ephesians, to strengthen themselves in the Lord and in the mighty power of the Lord. I think it's Ephesians 6:10. Paul is reminding us today that we need to strengthen ourselves in the Lord. Not when things are going well, but when things are going bad. Because we truly see the power of God when we are standing in the valley, when we are in the midst of the storm. That's when we see the true glory of God. Your zigzag may not disappear after you go home this afternoon. Perhaps like mine, it continues to grow, or perhaps God will take care of it for you. I don't know. But one thing I can assure you is this: beyond this zigzag on earth, there is a crown that awaits you. This body will be deteriorated, it will be destroyed, and it will be no more. But I look forward to the day where my God will give me new cells and a new body, and will give me the opportunity to spend the rest of my life to cry, how great thou art. Now, if you ask me, the human, how I want things to turn out, I'll tell you, God, let me give you. I have the list. It's pre-made. It's all there. All he has to do is sign at the bottom. I wrote the contract and everything. So if you want to know how I want it to turn out, I'll tell you. But as a Christian, my life doesn't belong to me. Because if I live, it is not for me. Okay? It is for God. And God may use us as He sees fit for His glory. Since the late 80s, gosh, it's been a long time, I come here and talk, and these talks have so many years, more than 3 decades of talk, seem so mechanical. It's just things that I know and just share. But see, now they're different. Because they no longer have to be mechanical. Because God has used me to help others understand who He is. So I don't have to stay here and yelling and shouting, raise my hand, and rushing across the stage and telling you about the power of God. I can share with you the power of God because my experience with Him has been phenomenal. When I'm facing my worst fear and I'm alone and my pillow is soaked with tears, He lays right beside me holding my hands, letting me know it's going to be okay. Soon and very soon the trumpet will sound and I will see Him standing in the air and He will call me to go and join Him in the air. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to it. Try to strengthen yourself in the power of the Lord and live for Him and try to give Him every moment of your life. I have to tell you, I used to get up every day with my agenda. What do I need to do to get the next promotion? I remember when I was a lieutenant in the Navy, being a lieutenant commander was my goal. Please tell me, what do I need to do? This school, that thing, and I was consumed by the next bar. to get promoted. In my career, it's always how to make more, how to get ahead. I live all day, every day. It was me, 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 me. And God is telling me, you're missing the point, my son. I'm the one you should be focused on. And I focus on God, and He gives me everything I need. It may not be what I think I want, but He gives me what I need. You see things differently when you strengthen yourself in the Lord. When you give up the self and start telling God what to do, you just let Him do what He does best. You do see life differently. You experience life differently. Now, don't get me wrong, Ziklag doesn't disappear. You will see the fire. You'll feel the heat. You'll be standing on ashes. You'll be looking at the giant. You'll see the water before you. You will see your Ziklag. It will not disappear. Strengthening yourself in the Lord and know that God has the capability to make it disappear if He so desire. And if He chose not to, who am I to question Him? He is in charge of my life. And if I say I trust Him, I have to trust Him no matter what the immediate outcome. Bear in mind, this is only short-lived. Your destiny is sealed. Nothing can stop you from reaching your destiny. The crown God has for you, nothing here on earth could ever stop you from getting that crown. The paradise, the promised land He has for you, nothing in this world could prevent you from attaining that. But some of the experiences at Ziklag we have to go through. Because sometimes we don't just get it. It took me more than 3 decades of reading the Bible, have gone through, even more than that if I count my Pathfinder years. And even more so if I count being 2 years old, being taught by my parents, my grandparents, and everyone else. So I've been hearing about God for quite a while. And it took me a while to get it. So I'm expecting all of us that you're not going to go home and all of a sudden you're like, yo, I got it. It's not like that. But if you desire to be strengthened by the Lord, His Spirit will help you. And when you get there, you will no longer worry about your problems. They will still be there. But they'll no longer be a concern of yours. Because your God will be managing it for you. My goal for you today is to learn to forget about everything you think is important in this world. To forget about these zigzags that we're facing. And focus on the Creator of the universe who says He loves you. He will never abandon you. He will take care of you, and nothing can happen to you without His express authority. So if something is happening to you and you find yourself in zigzag, it's not by accident, because our God knows the past, the present, and future, and He already knows that you were going to be at zigzag. But He also knows what comes after zigzag. What He wants us to do is to trust Him while we're going through zigzag. My prayer for all of us is to be mindful that beyond Jordan there is a promised land. And beyond Ziklag, there is a crown. God may not get rid of our Ziklag, but we can strengthen ourselves in His promise that one day, we will be with Him with new bodies. We will not feel pain. We will not undergo sorrow. It is a joy, a truly joyful moment for all who are brokenhearted. It is a comfort for those who are mourning. What a hope for those who are disheartened to know that one day this too will pass. Let us strengthen ourselves in the Lord and just sit back and watch His glory unfold. Because soon and soon, very soon, we will be receiving our crown. May God bless you.